Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Now, mobile has been out for 1 year now, and I was always planning I wanted to do a bit of a retrospective or an analysis of the year that mobile has been out and to kind of look how it impacted the game, what our player counts look like, whether I think it was a success or a failure or even a waste of time. And while I did miss it by a couple days, the 1 year anniversary I think was October 31st. How has the game changed in 1 year from the release of old school RuneScape Mobile? I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get started. Okay, now first up here I want to have a look at the player counts, as well, unsurprisingly it's probably one of the best indicators of a game's popularity. Now before mobile was released, old school RuneScape had been gaining in popularity, and around the release of mobile we had a pretty strong concurrent player base of around 60,000 players at a time, and even sometimes higher on the weekend. And then it came RuneScape Mobile and it shot up to unheard of levels. I think once we peaked at 155,000 concurrent players just on old school RuneScape, and I would argue that was probably one of the best points for old school RuneScape in its entire history. Everything was so alive, Tutorial Island was filled with noobs, and the general population was the highest we'd ever seen. And I think everyone was kind of surprised that these insanely high player counts persisted pretty much all the way until March. I personally was very surprised that that happened. I thought immediately after the release things would start slowing down, but they didn't, and that was an extremely hopeful time. There were a lot of new players, obviously a lot of existing players coming back or playing on their second device. I think a lot of content creators saw a lot of growth during that time, as there were just a lot more players looking for content, looking for information. Now it wasn't really until the beginning of March where things really started to drop off. From March onwards, things really did start to decline, with a minor surge up in the summertime once again. And now, as of recording this video, player counts are pretty much where they started. Now, it's kind of hard to say for sure, as it's been a 1 year time frame since the release of mobile, and our player counts were so inflated with new players, but I would have imagined the player counts to maybe be a little bit higher a year from now, because we would clearly have hung on to a few of the new players, on top of our existing player counts being a lot higher even before the release of mobile. But unfortunately, I think a lot of new players quit, and there is no real easy solution for this. RuneScape in general is in a bit of a paradox. There's no way to update the game for modern audiences without completely obliterating the existing audience. The game is just way too different from other mobile games and really any other game on PC today. This game is so old, it's from another era of games that don't really exist anymore. Games like World of Warcraft, MapleStory, RuneScape, these were the height of the early 2000s, and if you were gaming, you were playing an MMORPG, but that is just not the case anymore, and the only way to really compete with newer games is to make your game quicker, more streamlined, higher quality of life, and realistically have more up-to-date graphics, and none of these things can change without completely destroying the heart of old school RuneScape, which means we're always going to struggle to get new players, not to mention that the entire player base is generally going to be older now and have a lot less time for a game like RuneScape. Now that's all to say that I think this was inevitable, and I'm actually kind of impressed that it took this long for the player counts to drop back down to where they were. I think if mobile had been more rushed or an inferior product, I could have easily seen our player counts dropping down in months, not a year. Now I think possibly another reason for a bit of a decline in player counts is that we didn't get a lot of major updates in 2019, and while they were kind of geared towards early game players or mid-game players, there just wasn't a lot of them throughout the year. It doesn't help that Warding didn't end up passing, but in 2019 we realistically have gotten the Kelbos Lowlands, which I think was my favorite update of the year, but it was way back in January. We had the Forthos Dungeon, which really wasn't a major content update, although I really did like it as well. We have the Song of the Elves, which while was really fun, I don't actually play that much content in the Prifddinas area, and for whatever reason it didn't have the same impact or replayability as the other content that was released. And I think we're also going to get Leagues at the end of the year, but that is not even content for the main game, so it doesn't even really count. And now in my opinion 2020 is looking a little bit lackluster as well, with a new Mauritania expansion, Group Ironman, and a clan rework, two of which may not even apply to a lot of players. So I think just on the short-term horizon, throughout 2019 and even 2020, players just didn't see a lot that excited them, so they could easily have quit for that reason. Now, around 1 year ago, I had a few predictions on how I would interact with RuneScape Mobile, and for the most part, they turned out to be true. Now, these wouldn't necessarily apply to everyone, as I am a content creator, and I'm on my desktop a lot playing RuneScape, which means there wasn't really a lot of time I needed to go out on my phone and play RuneScape. Now, personally, what I mainly use RuneScape Mobile for is checking the Grand Exchange a couple times a day. I can do it very quickly and without anybody noticing for the most part. That said, the next update I want to see here is vertical mobile, so I don't look so damn obvious when I'm playing RuneScape. But my initial impression was that RuneScape would just require too much attention, too much clicking, there's too many interfaces, too many mechanics to really play on mobile. And while I would argue the mobile port is phenomenal, it's more to do with who actually has the attention when they're out on their phone to play to that degree. Yes, it's possible to do Barrows runs, it's possible to do skilling, stuff like that, but I didn't foresee myself ever actually doing that unless for whatever reason I didn't have access to a desktop and I could just fully concentrate on playing RuneScape. And that pretty much ended up being true for myself. Most people view mobile games as something you do on the side when you're out. Pretty much all of the most popular mobile games are extremely simple for that reason, or require very minimal amounts of time to actually play. For example, games like Farmville or Clash of Clans, where you really just have to wait in-game time to get things done. While player counts are not drastically different, I would argue that without a mobile, player counts would be actually lower still. And I would argue further that RuneScape Mobile is the best update to come to this game. It is the update I use almost every day, and I know a lot of players are the same way. I think it is a hugely impactful update for retaining players, keeping players interested, and generally having more concurrent players. I think all were positively affected by RuneScape Mobile. But beyond that, I do think it put RuneScape on the radars for a lot of players, even if they weren't all converted into regular players. This has been a huge year for growth of RuneScape YouTubers, content creation, and I think more than ever, OSRS has slid into more mainstream gaming areas, which I do think is in part due to mobile. Anyway guys, that is going to be it for today's video. So what do you think? Do you think RuneScape Mobile in the end was a good investment of resources and dev time, or do you think it was a waste of time? Let me know down below with a comment. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.